Ahead.
All right, we're all on YouTube and TV.
Good evening. Welcome to the July 6th City Commission meeting, our first meeting back in person. So we're going to have some growing pains, I think, in trying to operate the meeting in this hybrid setting. But to go ahead and start and give us some background on how we're going to operate the meeting, I'll have Porter O'Neill make a few comments about the operation of the meeting.
Thank you, Mayor, and good evening, everyone. I just want to share some housekeeping items for this now hybrid meeting. This meeting is being broadcast and recorded on the City of Lawrence YouTube channel. The public chat function is disabled, and all chats will go directly to me. When you are not participating in the meeting, please mute your microphone. When you are participating in the meeting, please keep your video on. When you are not participating in the meeting, please turn your video off. You will still be able to hear the meeting. You can turn your video back on when you are participating. Turning your video off when you are not participating allows the active meeting participants to be seen on the screen. If you have any trouble, please send me a chat. The city reserves the right to mute microphones and/or turn off people's video to minimize distractions as necessary. And now I'll return the meeting to Mayor Finkeldye.
Thank you, Porter. And we'll go ahead and have Sherry Wiedemann, our city clerk, give some comments about how we're going to handle public comment in this hybrid setting.
Thank you, Mayor. When public comment is sought on an item, the mayor will first call on those participating in person. Individuals wishing to provide public comment should raise their hand to indicate they wish to speak, and staff present will direct you to the podium to speak. Participants who are required to or choose to wear a mask may remove their mask while making remarks at the podium. Please state your name before speaking, and your comments will need to be limited to 3 minutes. The mayor will then call on those participating virtually. Individuals providing public comment via Zoom should use the raise hand function to indicate they wish to speak. The raise hand function may appear in different places on your Zoom menu, depending on the device you are using and which version of Zoom you have. Individuals will be called upon by name in the order they appear on the meeting host screen. When you are called on, please unmute and state your name. And again, comments will be limited to 3 minutes. Thank you.
Thank you, Sherry. A couple other comments I would make just for those who have been watching online. We'll no longer need to announce ourselves before we speak. Getting some feedback here.
Somebody has their audio on.
It's coming from me, but I can't, I'm muted.
Okay, first technical difficulty of the night.
Can you mute Craig?
Got it?
Better? Okay. Second, we'll no longer have to take roll call votes. And so we'll just, when I take the votes, you'll just be all in favor, all against, and then I'll announce the vote total. So we'll start with approving the agenda. The City Commission reserves the right to amend, supplement, or reorder the agenda during the meeting. Any commissioner like to change the agenda, or I'd look for a motion?
Move to approve the agenda.
Second.
So motion by Commissioner Nanda, a second by Commissioner Shipley. All those in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Next is the proclamations. And this month, we get to proclaim the month of July 2021 as Parks and Recreation Month. And I think Roger Steinbach will say a few words before we read the presentation. Or maybe it's Derek. I'm not sure who's going to do it.
Thank you, Mayor. Mayor and Commissioners, I'm Roger Steinbach, the Marketing Supervisor for Parks and Recreation. I just wanted to kind of highlight our department and what it brings to the community in terms of the quality of life. There's many things that a Parks and Recreation department is to a community, and one of them is adding to the history and fabric of people's lives. If you think back to your own time with Parks and Recreation, it may have been your first t-ball hit, the first time you dove into a pool, playing kickballs with colleagues after work. Maybe it's just walking with a loved one in a park, visiting a loved one in a cemetery. There's a number of things that we do on a daily basis that touch our lives and impact us in many ways, and most of it's in the feeling way. And I would be remiss if I didn't mention also that we're celebrating our 75th anniversary as a department within the city of Lawrence. And I just want to, on behalf of the Parks and Recreation Department, thank you, the City Commission, past and present, and in the future, for supporting us and what we do on a daily basis to help provide that quality of life that the citizens of Lawrence have grown to expect and want and desire. Thank you.
Thank you, Roger. I'll go ahead and read the proclamation. Whereas Parks and Recreation programs are an integral part of the City of Lawrence, and whereas our Parks and Recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region, and whereas Parks and Recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in preventing chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for those who have special needs, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. And whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature. And whereas the City of Lawrence recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now therefore, I, Brad Finkeldye, Mayor of the City of Lawrence, do hereby proclaim the month of July as Parks and Recreation Month. And I see both Derek and Mark online as well. I'd like to thank all of you for your service. In particular, during COVID, everyone knew the importance of Parks and Rec, but we learned it even more over the last year and a half. And that's a great proclamation, but it doesn't really even touch the surface of what you mean to our community. And thank you for all your efforts and extra efforts over this last year and in the year to come. So thank you very much. And when we get to the strategic plan later, we'll talk more about you, I'm sure. Okay, we're now moving to the consent agenda. All matters listed on the consent agenda are considered under one motion and will be approved by one motion. There'll be no separate discussion on those items. If discussion is desired, that item will be removed from the consent agenda and will be considered separately. Members of the public wishing to speak to an item that has been pulled off the consent agenda will be limited to 3 minutes for comments. Would any member of the commission like to pull any items off of the consent agenda?
Mayor, I'd like to pull C9A and B.
C9A and C9B? Mm-hmm. Excellent. Any others? Would any member of the public like to pull an item off the consent agenda? I'll call first on the people present. Raise your hand if you'd like to pull something off the consent agenda. If not, I see none here present. If anyone online would like to pull something off the consent agenda, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature, and Sherry will call upon you.
Mayor, it doesn't look like there's any anyone who wants to pull an item.
Thank you, Sherry. Seeing none, I look for a motion on the consent agenda.
I'll move to approve the consent agenda accepting items C9A and B.
Second.
So motion by Commissioner Nanda, a second by Commissioner Lawson. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Passes 5-0. We'll now take up C9A first. I'm not sure if they're the same issues, but let's start with C9A. Go ahead, Vice Mayor.
Yeah, I would have the same issue with both of them in light of our regular agenda items, the planning prioritization and our strategic plan. It seems like these might fall into certain categories of the planning prioritization. And I kind of want to say that it seems like we're doing things in a very different way in light of our strategic plan. And, without putting too fine a point on it, these kind of text amendments do take staff time. And either one of them might end up being swept into some of the things already prioritized. So I don't know, maybe if Jeff Crick is on, I haven't looked, if he could maybe give us what's the minimum amount of time one of these text amendments costs staff? Would we expect them to fall into some of these categories of things we're already going to be looking into and prioritizing? I guess either one of them I wouldn't put at the top of the list of things I'd like to see planning spending time on compared to many of the other things we've talked about in the past, and that will be in our regular agenda items. So I don't know if that's too pointed a question for Jeff, but.
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services Director. Vice Mayor, if I think I followed your question correctly, my audio was a little touch and go there. It was how much staff time it would take for the item to, both items to kind of go and process through. Was that correct?
Yes.
Okay. Each text amendment is a little bit different. I would hazard, a guess that item C9A would be a little bit of a shorter item than C9B because of the complexities of C9B with occupancy standards, and those situations would cause us to look a little bit deeper into different code sections than beyond the land development code to understand it. C9A would also probably take at least a few months to kind of work through the nuances and the details to it. And if I followed the Vice Mayor's question correctly, I think it was also, would this get rolled up into some other things potentially that are ongoing? Yes, it could potentially get rolled up into the land development code revision and update process as part of that. So it would be an amendment that could be underway and initiated, and then also then kind of rolled up into that package update potentially later in the future. So it could be a little bit of on its own, but it may also occur as part of that update too, depending upon the total scope of that project.
Jeff, in addition to that, I believe at least the one, the mini warehouses, it seemed like there was something that happened relatively recently, maybe the end of last year, where some mini warehouses came up, and it had already been kind of through a planning process and wasn't terribly successful. So I just wondered also, number one, some of that work might have already been done by planning, but maybe a little bit of an answer had been given as to the appropriateness of these in certain areas.
One second. Lisa, I think you're unmuted.
I don't think it's Lisa.
Oh, mine doesn't show you muted.
Oh, it does show unmuted.
It does not show
Oh,
you
it doesn't
muted.
show
Can
you. Sorry, everyone.
Just click to join audio.
Oh, so maybe you're just not joined, which is why you're not muted.
Yeah, click that. Click the little arrow.
Second technical difficulty of the night, but this isn't bad. We're getting going here. I think we're getting a little feedback.
Yeah, join it and then immediately unjoin it.
Join it.
Mute it.
That's what you just did.
Join it.
This will give Jeff time to think about his answer while we'll.
No. Join it.
There you go, join it.
Yeah.
And then,
Yeah. Now.
There we go.
is that better?
Let's see if that stops the feedback. Okay, Jeff, now go ahead and answer.
Sorry.
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services. There was a text amendment about 2 to 3 years ago that looked at mini warehouses and storage facilities, and that process kind of wrapped up about the beginning of 2019. So it's not been a code section that's been on the books as it has for a while. It's been a relatively recent text amendment that we have just completed. So this would be an amendment on top of the work that was just completed about 2 years ago or so.
I guess my follow-up question, Jeff, would be, when we initiate a text amendment like this, where does it fall on your priority list? I mean, does it mean it jumps to the top, or does it, how do you prioritize it amongst other things on your work plan?
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services. With an applicant-initiated text amendment, we do prioritize them a little higher because an applicant has submitted an application. It does have an expectation that it will complete soon, as fast as we can kind of make those motions go through. Like I mentioned, I think the application for C9B would be a longer process just because there's a lot more things that are connected to that, and understanding the full nuance of that would take us a little bit longer. But when an applicant does submit an amendment, we do try to work those as fast as we can. So they do kind of move a little bit faster than ones that would be initiated by staff and those kind of similar ones.
It seems like, I recall when I was on the Planning Commission, we saw one or two of these where the recommendation was not to initiate. But more recently, we seem to initiate them, even if it comes back later with a negative recommendation. Is that kind of the practice, to go ahead and initiate them? It doesn't mean either staff or the city is going to support it, but you initiate it, look at it, and then come back with a recommendation?
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services, that's correct. This is just to initiate it, to allow staff the time to look at them and research them in depth. It's not setting a stance for that one. It doesn't render a professional recommendation for it. It just allows us the time to look at it. So maybe we look at it and staff recommends approval, or it may recommend denial, depending upon the other factors in there. This just begins the process for the amendment to begin.
Other questions? I'll go ahead and open up to public comment maybe first, and then we can bring it back for discussion. If any member of the public would like to speak on this item, if you're here present, raise your hand and let me know, and I'll call upon you. I guess Sherry will call upon you.
Hi, good evening. I'm Michael Allman, and it's good to be back. Good to see you all. This item just popped up last Thursday on the agenda, and so the Brook Creek Neighborhood Association hasn't had a chance to discuss it or review it or make any decision, but I could bet you dollars to donuts we would oppose it. I noticed that the Sunset Hills neighborhood is opposing it, but I'll speak for myself tonight. I would recommend that you not initiate this text amendment. As a community organizer that tries to protect my own neighborhood from these types of incursions, and as someone trying to preserve our local ecology sometimes, I just have to say I am really tired of land exploiters who want to do something that's not allowed by our development code and then try to get the code changed to suit their desires. The penultimate example of this was the Watkins Law Firm, who five times, took up a lot of staff commission time to change the code and the comprehensive plan to shoehorn a 400,000 square foot K-10 crossing development over 101 acres of Wakarusa wetlands and 100-year floodplain. But by the same token, about every time we seem to turn around, Paul Werner is attempting to change the code to suit his aims. He actually has two such amendments on the agenda tonight, as you know. But you know, this community has worked long and hard to formulate our code and comprehensive plan to achieve our common goals. Paul Werner should align his plans with the code, not expect us to weaken our code to give him free rein. A text amendment that would grant citywide blanket right to build mini warehouses in all CN2 and RMO zones is just not a good idea. They could end up in practically any neighborhood on any intersection. I have several in my neighborhood that would qualify, RMO and CN2. And it would take up a lot of staff time, as you were just discussing, for something that, why should we accommodate a developer who keeps trying to change our code like this? So I'd recommend you not initiate it, because it's just going to be a waste of a lot of our time, really. So thank you.
Good to have you back as well, Michael. And seeing no one else in person who'd like to make comment on this item, if any person watching online would like to make a comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature, and Sherry will call upon you.
Mayor, no one has indicated they have comment on this item.
Okay, seeing no other comment, I bring it back up to the commission for comments.
Mayor, I hope it's not in any way construed, my pulling this or suggesting that is in any way objecting to either of the items, only that we are prioritizing things in a very different way, and as Jeff, I believe, agreed, either one of these might be swept into some of what we're already investing in. I hate to see duplication of time on staff's part, or kind of prioritizing things in the old way when we're very consciously trying to prioritize community things that, might benefit the most people. So I guess I myself might vote against these, but not because I have any particular opinion about either one, but only knowing that they will be addressed in our planning prioritization later. My recollection anyway was that yourself, myself, and Commissioner Larson were particularly interested in investing rather a lot of money, not just in staff, but perhaps even in a study, going back and looking at our codes and seeing where a lot more ease can be gotten for developers, or more flexibility for residential or even commercial. So I don't know if anyone else would join me, but again, only in that we are trying to be far more conscious about what we prioritize and how we prioritize it.
Other thoughts?
Is it possible to, in approving this, have that correlate with the timeline for those other amendments? So it's not necessarily not approving it, but allowing it to be part of that broader process?
I don't know, Jeff or Craig, could we direct staff to roll it in with particular items?
Frankly, I just agree with Commissioner Shipley. I mean, I think we should not approve this tonight and let the planning priorities be set as described. So.
Jeff, again, I guess following up on my question, if we, again, trying to talk this through, I mean, if we approve these, well, okay, first of all, if we did not approve these, there's nothing in our code that wouldn't let them bring it up at a later time or at a time you direct, correct? I mean, at a time you could work it in. I mean, I know like with our rezoning application or something, if a zoning application fails, you have to wait a year. There's nothing like that in the code, is there, on a text amendment? And I guess the corollary question would be, if we initiated this, is there anything that prevents you from putting it on the list when you see fit, and not necessarily, I mean, and that might be a couple months from now, it might be a couple weeks from now? I mean, how do you prioritize that?
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services. Mayor, you are correct. There's nothing in the code that requires it to sit out for 12 months if it is denied by the City Commission, so it doesn't have that same item. If the item is initiated and the Commission gives us the direction to work him at a certain pace, or to work him with a certain thing in mind, we will happily follow that guidance to that end there. So if it is to kind of, have them initiate and then packaged up as part of the revision process, if it is commenced, or kind of work it as we can make it available without jeopardizing the other priorities that we have available, we can definitely make those accommodations.
Yeah, I actually would agree with Commissioner Shipley on this. We put a lot of pressure on planning staff this past few months to come up with a strong prioritization list, as well as we've added staff in order to address some of the neighborhood issues regarding planning and all of our Plan 2040 issues that need to be straightened out yet. There's a lot of work that staff is doing, and I don't think that I would want to put anything in place that would potentially disrupt that prioritization that staff have come up with on it. So I would be in agreement with that.
I guess I would probably lean towards, letting it initiate it, but letting the staff work it in as they saw fit, but looks like 3 people have spoken, so.
Is there an appeal process that they could go through if we don't approve the text amendment? Is there an appeal process if we don't approve the initiation of the text amendment?
My understanding is this is a final decision for you unless
Okay.
they would reapply.
Looks like Randy was raising his hand. I assume that's,
Yes, this is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. There is no appeal process for this situation. It's a legislative item regarding changing the code. If you choose to initiate it, it just has to relate to whether or not you want to change the law or consider changing the law. If you deny it, that just means you've decided you don't want to change what the city code is. So there is no appeal process related to text amendment.
Thank you.
Commissioner, I guess I don't need to say my name. I would ask Jeff a question is, since this came up on the consent agenda, how would you envision this fitting in with your prioritization plan?
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services. We would try to prioritize it, to kind of meet those meet the applicant's needs. But like I said, as we start to look into these, they may take us a lot longer, but it would be something we would actively keep working on as part of an application that was submitted to us from a member of the public.
So do I understand that would potentially take away from other projects that you got on your list in order to address this?
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services, yes, we would move this one up to kind of take some of that to be a quicker focus on the item.
Thank you, Jeff. Appreciate that. Yeah.
Mayor, since it's 2 different items also, I want to be sure whatever we're doing or not, I mean, again, I don't want it to be in any way construed as a denial, only an understanding that we expect these to be talked about in context of a much larger discussion. Could we table them? How do we vote or not vote on this is my question. Maybe that's better for Sherry.
well, I guess if tabling it would be one option, deferring it, but nothing prevents them, from bringing it back at another time anyway, even if we deny it, so I'm not sure it makes a big difference. Unless Jeff or Craig has another thought, I don't think that makes a difference. Randy, do you have a thought?
This is Randy Larkin, Deputy City Attorney. Actually, if you don't initiate it, whether you table or to defer, it's the same result is going to be made. So that's totally at your discretion, but it doesn't really make any difference from a practical standpoint, whether you defer or table or just don't initiate it.
Mayor, can I just get clarity for Randy? So Randy, if they just wouldn't take action on it, they wouldn't need to deny it, they just wouldn't take action, correct?
Right. They just would not initiate the proposed text amendment.
Sherry, do we need to vote to not take action?
No.
Okay.
Well, that's a little awkward. Let's see,
Yeah.
we don't vote to,
Mayor, I
I
want to
guess I'd make a motion that we not initiate the text
I
amendments.
think that's cleaner.
C9A and C9B.
Is there a second?
if I may, just to clarify, again, if I can, just to be sure that it's not an understanding on staff's part that we are disinterested in it, only that it be prioritized with other things.
You will need to take a separate vote because I don't think it was clear that we were taking public comment on both items.
Okay.
Okay.
So we need to open up the second one for public comment before we vote on that. So let's just,
So I would amend the motion to C9A only.
So the motion is to deny initiating a text amendment. Is there a second?
Second.
There's a motion by Commissioner Bully, a second by Vice Mayor Shipley. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All those opposed, nay. Passes 4-1. We'll now take up C9B. For those who couldn't hear what Sherry was saying, Sherry Wiedemann wanted to be clear that we had taken up both C9A and C9B. So we'll go ahead, Vice Mayor, I assume you have no other questions on C9B, but we'll go ahead and open C9B up for public comment. If anyone present would like to speak on C9B, raise your hand. Seeing, oh, Chris?
Hi, this is Chris Flowers. I didn't get a chance to really go through all this, but I think we should be kind of increasing occupancy limits if that's what, isn't that what Plan 2040 is, increasing density, and wouldn't increasing occupancy limits increase density? That's just something that comes to my mind. Thank you.
Seeing no other member of the public present who'd like to make a comment, if anyone on Zoom would like to make a comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand function, and Sherry will call upon you.
There's no public comment on this item.
Thank you. Bring it back up to the commission. Motion?
I move that we not initiate text amendment as shown in C9B.
Second.
Motion by Commissioner Boley, a second by Vice Mayor Shipley. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay. Passes 4-1. Okay, that brings us to public comment. The public is allowed to speak on items or issues that are not scheduled for discussion on the agenda. As a general practice, the Commission will not discuss or debate these items, nor will the Commission make decisions on items presented during this time. Individuals should address all comments and questions to the Commission. Each person will be limited to 3 minutes. If any member of the public who is present would like to make a general public comment about something not on the agenda, please raise your hand and Sherry will call upon you.
Sir, if you want to go ahead. Mhm. Yeah, go ahead to the podium. Oh,
I'll make it.
Take your time.
My name is Alfredo Parra. First of all, I want to say that before I read this is that I feel strongly that the process is more important than the outcome. I also believe that an insult to one is an insult to all. My name is Alfredo Parra. I work with more than 50 years as an organizer and advocate on behalf of marginalized communities, from undocumented immigrants to being the sponsor of the Chicano Latino culture class at Leavenworth Federal Penitentiary, to working on behalf of my neighborhood, which is being plagued by gentrification. I give you these few examples of my activism merely because I've been demonized and my credibility has been dragged through the mud by Sanctuary Alliance Lawrence and their cronies. Because my credibility has been called into question, I'll gladly present my resume if necessary. I'm going to jump to another page. I made an objection to the Lawrence Times of their appointing Mariel Ferrero onto their community advisory board. Mariel Ferrero was so abusive to me in person and in emails that I reported her to an elder abuse hotline about 1.5 years ago. I also reported Kincaid Dante, another Sanctuary Alliance member, to the hotline about a week ago. On the advice of the elder abuse hotline, I reported both of them to the police. I want the commission to know I never felt the need to report anybody to such a hotline in my life until meeting these people in Lawrence. I also intend to file a complaint with the Human Relations Department and also the state. I sent the commission a copy of the message Kincaid sent me. One of the things that he said, and I quote, that I was a sick, narcissistic piece of shit that happened to get old. Online, he said I was trashy, a person working with a trashy newspaper. And he went to the trouble of posting a link to an article that I wrote, which was published by the Lawrence Journal World. The title of the article was "Okay Boomer." Kincaid is the big advocate of the Lawrence Times and was livid that I objected to the appointment of Maria Ferrero to the Lawrence Times Community Advisory Board and spoke out against their undemocratic treatment of me. Citizens of Lawrence deserve to know the truth, that both of these groups... Time?
Yes, time.
Thank you.
Good evening.
I'll grab them.
I'm Peter Harkis.
If it wasn't included in the agenda packet before, it won't be included now.
I can post it myself.
You can go ahead, sir.
Okay. I'm going to continue reading the commentary that Alfredo started. We heard from city employee Porter Arneal that I'm blanking out his title, but that this might not be an issue that the city can weigh in on. It's like okay.
Just read these.
Okay. But also, it's public access to the Lawrence Times. I don't know. You'll figure. Okay. I'm sorry. Alfredo has been attacked online by kind of high-profile people, and I just wanted to use this venue. If you can't address it as a city code violation, just to kind of inform the public that these cyber attacks and even in person really are hateful. Alfredo has posted about the need for our community, LGBTQ+, to discuss ageism and racism, but that's just ignored, and he's demonized by these people from Sanctuary Alliance and the Lawrence Times, one and the same, and also another administrator of an online group who told me that my sacrifices didn't matter. This was very sarcastic. Pronouns and gender identity were a lot more important than anything I had to say.
More than my sacrifices.
Yeah. We are one community. We shouldn't let anyone divide us. When the online group had a meltdown, people said they didn't feel safe.
Okay. Yes.
Well,
thank you. And we have the
thank you.
handout. Thank you.
Okay.
Chris Flowers, did you provide comment?
Hi, this is Chris Flowers. I sent in a public comment. I was just touching up on that. Basically, I want, in June, I guess the mayor at the time, who was Jennifer Nanda, asked the Human Relations Commission to review ordinances that disproportionately affect marginalized communities. And basically, in December, when the HRC was set to look at it, the city staff told them that the HRC was not tasked with looking at city ordinances that. So I was just coming here to ask that you all task the let the HRC look at city codes and ordinances that do disproportionately affect marginalized communities. One of the ordinances I'm trying to get passed is to ban or do away with our topless bans, because besides being sexist, it's trans unfriendly, and that like a police officer would have to make an assumption about if that person's a woman or a guy. And what if someone identifies as they? Are they allowed to go topless? So I just want to be able to go to the HRC and have the HRC look at at least be able to discuss the code. And I just think the prosecutors are going to be saying that it's not the HRC's job, because I think the prosecutors, I don't think they want to lose the ban. So I just need, or y'all could just look at the topless ban for yourselves, because I believe Manhattan, Kansas, they've done away with their topless ban because it's sexist. And do you really want Manhattan to out-progressive us, you know? It's just kind of crazy that we're the ones being left backwards while Manhattan moves forward. So I'm just asking that, though, that you, because I know the HRC has another meeting Monday. I've already told them, because they put it off because they're going to have Citygate look at the ordinances. But Citygate, I didn't see anything in there about ordinances. So I'm going to be going back to the HRC to ask them, you know, to look at the topless ban. But if you guys could actually task HRC, it'll make my job easier. Thank you.
Was there anyone else that I missed that wanted to provide general public comment? Yeah, just in person.
See no one else in person. If anyone online would like to make general public comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature or indicate as such, and Shay will call upon you.
Chad Osdale?
Just muted.
Chad, you can go ahead.
You're still muted, Chad.
That's better. Can you hear me now?
Yes.
Okay. I was here to ask the same question I've asked many times before. What is the two method of scoring, the two method of evaluating and scoring performance appraisals? Please have the city explain in writing what it is. Because the City of Lawrence Performance Appraisal Handbook says absolutely nothing about a two method of scoring. It only gives one appraisal method of scoring. It doesn't say anything about how individual departments are scored. And I was curious, why don't we even deserve to be told why our department is evaluated differently than other departments, and just be told, you know, how we are evaluated and why it's done differently for every damn department. I'm sorry. But I've asked this question before. It's not the way it's written in your handbook, but at the very bottom it says citywide or department-wide. That had been changed this year. After me complaining for a while, I assume that's why. But we've still never been told why we're evaluated differently and what the 2 method is that my department is evaluated using. What is a 2 method? There's nothing written anywhere in city policy about a 2 method of scoring the appraisal process. And I cannot get the city to answer. It's not the way it's written, but that's just the way we do things. Now, please answer somewhere, sometime. Thank you very much, and have a good evening.
That's all the comment, Mayor.
Okay, we'll now move on to regular agenda item number 1, which is to receive and provide guidance on the 2022-2024 planning work plan. I'm assuming Jeff gets to lead us off here.
Good evening, Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services. The commissioners may remember this from years gone by, but this is the 2022-2024 work plan. And we kind of restructured it a little bit from what you've seen in previous years to accommodate for a couple of changes that we've seen, both in the programming of the items, but also in the capacity of the department that has recently changed. So this work plan really reflects an improved ability to continue meeting those expectations for the current planning projects. So the site plans, the rezonings, those items that you tend to see from the Planning Commission, and also some of those administrative items that just occur as part of the development process as whole. But it also lets us really have a good focus on the long range efforts. So the sector plans, the corridor, and the neighborhood planning efforts that we've been trying to get to for many years, that we've seen on the work plan many times over. So you'll notice that we've included a chart this year that indicates both the current projects that are underway and some of the details related to them, but also a good 3-year steps to kind of show the work that we think is ambitious, but we're all very optimistic that we can meet those marks as we get moving forward on those. So 2 things to kind of highlight. It does kind of have some of this items where we kind of tried to build on year to year. So kind of include the things early on that allow us to reach those things later in 23 and 24. So it kind of builds on the work as it goes forward. But it also lets us look at long-range planning efforts. So you'll see we structured it to kind of be a county-focused plan and a city-focused plan every year for the next 3 years. So you'll see that there's, one will be kind of more of a county focus, such as the West of K10 plan. And then we look at a neighborhood plan in the next year in East Lawrence or Indian Hills or the other ones that are listed. So that's kind of the way that we've prioritized the workload kind of going forward on that. So we do think that, like I said earlier, we think it's ambitious. We're very optimistic that with the staff we have and the staff coming on board, that we'll be able to meet those marks and do some good work. So it really lets us focus more on the planning and the long-term efforts instead of the day-to-day zoning sometimes that we tend to do. So we're bringing this to kind of, receive guidance and kind of recommendations on those kind of items, and we'll kind of retool it. And you'll again see this as we kind of go forward from year to year as we progress and provide more information and see how we're meeting those marks. And I know it's a very quick and high-level overview, so I'd be happy to stand for any questions that you have this evening.
Any commissioners have questions for Jeff? Jeff, I guess I'll start. The Planning Commission and County Commission has seen this plan?
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services, correct. They both have seen this plan. I believe Planning Commission was in April, and the County Commission was about mid-June. The date has slipped my mind. I'm so sorry.
Did either of them is this like we amended from the original plan, or have they both agreed with the plan that we're seeing here?
Jeff Craig, Planning Development Services. It is not amended. This was the draft that they've all seen and everybody has agreed with. So there wasn't any substantial amendments to it. There was some guidance from the County Commission on some items related to if there is an adjustment and those things. But in all, the first plan we laid out in April has been seen by the other 2 and forwarded on.
Okay, other questions for Jeff?
Jeff, I had a question for you. So we're looking at this through 2024. Do the projects that are listed in all these years, do they pretty much cover the Plan 2040 needs as far as the tasks and the work that needs to be done?
Commissioner Larson, if I may, I wasn't sure I caught the tail end of the question. Did it cover all of the works all the items in 2040?
Yeah, Plan 2040, it has a list of tasks that are needed as far as plans, sector plans and all that, does this cover all the tasks that have been detailed in Plan 2040?
Jeff Craig, Planning Development Services. It does not cover all those action items that were listed in Plan 2040. So as the years keep going on through the 20 years of that plan, we will keep kind of going back to those action items to move them on. There is a bit of a sequence in Plan 2040, and certain ones have to occur to allow the others to kind of have the best chance of developing forward. So we've prioritized a work plan to reflect that, but this 3-year work plan will not cover all the items that are listed in the implementation section.
So do you have any idea how long it will take to go through all that task list in Plan 2040?
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services, I don't. It can just depend on where the commissions see the priority and the raising need, and there may be some things out there that we didn't anticipate during Plan 2040 that may need to be reprioritized. Theoretically, the hope was that all the action items we programmed into the comprehensive plan would wrap up in the 20-year time frame of the plan.
Okay, thank you.
Seeing no other questions at the moment, I will go ahead and open this up to public comment. If a member of the public who's present would like to make a comment on this item, please raise your hand, and Sherry will call upon you if you're present. Doesn't look like anyone present would like, oh, there is someone present. Michael?
Hi, Michael Allman again. Thank you for the opportunity. I've mentioned previous times when speaking for the Sustainability Action Network, which tonight I guess I can say I am. It's not like this is a formal consultation from them, but we've taken a position before that the item here for 2023, the Climate Change Adaptation and Mitigation Plan, listed, no, 2022, excuse me, that various times I've requested and urged the Commission, Planning Commission, the City Commission to prioritize that particular study, move it up to the top of the list. Some of the adjustments that have been made to this plan over the last few months are good as far as the other kind of concerns that I have, but tonight I'm focused on the climate. I'm not sure how much everybody in the audience or the commission are paying much attention, but practically every day or every week there's a new climate emergency that's made public. I mean, even if you consider the Champlain Tower South collapse is a climate tragedy. And the way that is, for example, the salt water that has, since 1990 in the ocean rise, has risen 5.9 inches. That salt water is saturating the ground underneath these condos at the ocean front. And that's what's corroding the concrete and the rebar. And that's been established. If you look in the news, you can see that they're attributing it to that, if not other things as well. That's just one example. The permafrost in eastern Siberia is melting. Not only is it melting, last week it reached the soil of the permafrost, reached 118 degrees. That's not the air temperature, that's the soil. We know what's going on in the western United States, the Pacific Northwest, British Columbia, 50 plus wildfires in British Columbia right now. 500 people died from the heat dome last week. Just one thing after another. It's accumulating, it's growing, it's gaining momentum. We can't deny it anymore. I mean, this community hasn't denied it, but I think we need to recognize that the time to really push and move on this and try to restabilize the climate has to take top priority. I mean, my neighborhood needs attention, transit needs attention, all of this does, but everything is dependent on the climate. So I would suggest that this be moved up to the top of the list in 2021.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Anyone else present like to make comments on this item? Seeing none, if any person on Zoom would like to make comments on this item, please raise your hand using the raise your hand feature. We'll let Sherry know and she'll call upon you.
Mayor, there's no public comment on this item.
Okay, seeing no public comment, we'll bring the item back to the commission for comments or motions. Comments?
Mayor, I was a little surprised to see floodplain regulations were kind of only medium priority, since we speak rather a lot about stormwater and development. But I may be looking at it maybe through too broad a lens, and maybe other commissioners like Larson would have a clearer insight into whether one thing needs to happen before the other, and that's kind of how it came to be.
Well, I would note that that's the priority given to it by the Planning Commission.
Right.
So they obviously are sometimes looking more at planning items than stormwater, which we might look at more. But maybe that's a question for Jeff. I mean, I guess I looked at this and I thought, well, we need to get the stream buffer ordinance done first, and then that leads into the stormwater and then the floodplain regulations. But Jeff, any comment on that?
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services. Mayor, you're correct. Those are kind of those first building blocks that let us work on the floodplain regulations are the stream buffers and the land disturbance. That kind of helps us set that foundation for improvements that we can do in the floodplain ordinances and regulations. So we kind of had a very similar thought about, kind of getting those foundational blocks in place to allow us to do those larger scale changes as we go through the more broad code perspective.
I will say that as I remember back to some of our previous plans, we might typically only get one or two things each year. So to see what you're proposing to cover in a year and the plans we're planning to work on, I certainly appreciate that, and I think some of the additions we made, I assume, make that possible.
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services. That's correct. That does allow us to have that capacity to really go into some of those longer range, bigger, broader items that we normally wouldn't get into. So that's why you see that work plan change from a couple of items to really going up. And like I mentioned, we're optimistic. It is ambitious, but we're very optimistic we can meet the marks that we're putting out here.
We have confidence in you, Jeff. Other comments?
So it seems to me that this year, 2021, we're kind of wrapping up a lot of different projects that have been in the works for a few years. That's what I'm seeing, Jeff. Is that correct?
Jeff Craig, Planning and Development Services. That's correct.
Okay. So the idea that, I would love to see the climate plan moved up as well as the floodplain, but I think there is an order that needs to be followed to make sure we have all of our ducks in a row so we can get the appropriate plans done, given the information we get from getting earlier plans done. I do think that from a climate change standpoint, we have put in some safeguards and some goals that are helping us to move forward with taking care of our community, and which is what we can do. That's the best thing we can do. And so I'm not as worried about having the floodplain down a little bit further down the list, because I do think that you've got a good order going here and that we've got some safeguards in place.
Yeah, I was quite pleased to see what we are working on and are wrapping up, and then the prioritization of the climate change plan, as well as, the neighborhood plan is in there, and that's something that we've been talking about a lot. So that really is top priority is 2022, because there are so many that we are wrapping up this year.
Sherry, do we need a motion on this? Whenever I see receive, I'm not sure we need a motion or not.
No, Jeff, I'm assuming you don't need a motion unless there's some direction that they're wanting to change anything on this plan, correct?
Correct.
Okay. which I didn't hear any consensus on making any changes.
Well, then we don't need a motion. Does anyone make any other comments or make any direction?
I appreciate the work and look forward to the product.
Okay. Thank you, Jeff. We look forward to seeing these plans come back to us.
I guess I would like to say one more thing.
Yeah, go ahead.
And that is, as this plan kind of develops and matures, I would appreciate planning staff coming back to us if they start to run into problems with getting things done in a timely manner based on their prioritization.
I guess I kind of see this like the CIP, that it's a long-range plan, but every year we look at it to see
That's why it's good.
if it doesn't change a little bit each year. So, but good to have a plan to look ahead, and we'll look at it again every year. Okay, anything further on that one? Seeing none, go ahead and move to an update on the strategic plan.
Good evening, Mayor and Commissioners. Danielle Bushcutter, Budget and Strategic Initiatives Administrator. I'm going to share my screen quick, but I'm really excited to be with you all this evening to give an update on our strategic plan. So let me share my screen. And we will go ahead and jump into it. So this evening, we're going to go through a bit of an overview, kind of how we have gotten here today, talk about the framework that you all have already seen and adopted, as well as provide a bit of an update on the progress indicators, strategies, and next steps related to our strategic plan. So to highlight a little bit on kind of the development and implementation process that we've gone through to date is really started with public engagement. So we'll get into some of the details. I know you've heard us say this a number of times, but we really had an extensive public engagement effort on the front end of the strategic planning process to really hear from our community, to get input from them on the front end of this process as we really went through the development and ultimately the implementation of our strategic plan. Used that to develop a framework and ultimately identify progress indicators, which you all have seen to date. And the new item before you this evening is really the outline of the various strategies. So these will be the things that help us move towards achieving those progress indicators that we have identified. Next steps that we haven't done yet, but will be part of our regular updates to you all is ultimately to define the targets of those different progress indicators, figure out where exactly we want to be related to each of those. And then ultimately, it's to incorporate all of this into our budgeting and decision making. As you all know, we're going to be in front of you next week talking about our 2022 budget. And so we really wanted to make sure this was in front of you before that discussion really gets underway a little bit further. And I think it's really important to note that as we've kind of gone through this process over the last year and a half or so, that thousands of hours of discussion have kind of led us to this point. You know, a lot of that happened in the public engagement, but also on the staff side to really get this to where it is today. However, with that being said, this is not going to be perfect. It's really important that we continually have those feedback loops, hear from you all, hear from the community, and refine this as we need to moving forward. And the budget is a really great opportunity to do that. So you've seen this slide a number of times, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I think it is really important to remember how much community input we received as part of this process through a number of different avenues as we were going through this development process. So again, I just wanted to kind of walk through the framework with you all here this evening. It looks a little bit different. We obviously have this all put together in one report so that we have one kind of centralized place we can go to refer back to all of these things. But the content for this framework is not new. It just looks a little bit different than it has before. So still includes the mission, vision, and values, the 5 outcome areas that we have been talking about, along with the 6 commitments that really articulate how we do what we do. So I'm going to walk through the document just to kind of get everyone oriented within the document. I am by no means going to go through all of our progress indicators this evening or all of the strategies. You all have that in this document. So I really just kind of want to make sure that everyone is kind of comfortable using this. So within the document, we kind of have these different sections for each of our outcome areas. We have a nice kind of cover page, and right next to that, we have the progress indicators. So these should look very familiar. We have referred to this previously as our scorecard. And you can see with each of those, we have kind of a scoring key, if you will, to denote the different indicators that we have. Where this gets to be helpful is on the following pages where we start to articulate and identify the various strategies we have related to each outcome area. So for unmistakable identity, we have 12 strategies. We still have kind of organized this under the lens of the different commitment areas. And you can see related to each strategy, we've denoted which progress indicators that strategy is going to help us move the needle on. So some of these are going to really be critical for one progress indicator, whereas others you're going to see are going to help us move the needle on multiple progress indicators. I should also note that throughout this, we also have some fun facts included as well. So you will see that too. The next area, strong welcoming neighborhoods. These progress indicators have not changed. The only kind of difference in what you are seeing here tonight versus what we shared with you a couple months ago is that we have moved the progress indicator of cost per capita of solid waste collected from our connected cities outcome into our strong welcoming neighborhoods outcome. We thought this was a better fit because this is where we're really capturing the employee engagement index for solid waste employees. And so we didn't want to just move one solid waste indicator over without moving the other. So the indicator itself hasn't changed. It's just found a new home under strong welcoming neighborhoods instead of connected cities. Under strong welcoming neighborhoods, we have 12 strategies identified. The other thing that I should have noted previously that I will note now is you will see under the engaged and empowered teams that all of these strategies are collected on page 37 of the document under the citywide strategies, just so we didn't have the same strategies listed in each of the different outcome areas. So I just wanted to note that as we go through this document. The next outcome area is safe and secure. So this is another area where we did not have any changes to any of the progress indicators that you all have seen previously. And as it relates to the strategies, there are 17 different strategies under this particular outcome area. So this is a really good example of a place where we have one strategy with multiple progress indicators identified that particular strategy will help us to achieve. Prosperity and economic security is our 4th outcome area. Again, no notable changes here related to the progress indicators. And we have 12 different strategies identified under this particular outcome area. And then finally, we'll move over to connected cities. As we were going through, and I'll get into this in a little bit more detail, but collecting some of the data related to these different progress indicators, there were a couple kind of grammatical and more semantic changes related to a couple of these. For example, we now under efficient and effective processes have the months per year the city is in compliance with minimum water and wastewater discharge standards. Previously, we had days per year. So just some of those things to help align some of these indicators with how we typically track some of that data. So there are kind of a few of those small kind of semantic changes in this. But one notable change that I want to highlight is related to CC9 under sound fiscal stewardship. So the cost per passenger trip on Lawrence Transit. This is a new indicator that was not included initially in the scorecard that you all received. The item that was here in its place was related to the implementation of a plan for the lowest cost of ownership, which is really reflected in kind of all of those sound fiscal stewardship measures. So as we were discussing that a little bit more, that change was made to remove that metric and replace it with the cost per passenger trip on Lawrence Transit. So that was a notable change that I wanted just to highlight to you all and make sure that you all were aware of that change. And then finally, we have 13 strategies under this outcome area as well. I shouldn't say finally, there's one more section, the citywide section. There, as you'll recall, these are kind of those key indicators that really flow through the entire plan and really impact each of those outcome areas. So instead of listing them separately in each outcome area, we've kind of pulled them all together here. So with these strategies, we have 12 identified, and this is where you can really see all of those engaged and empowered teams, strategies that were referred to earlier in the document. So I wanted to take a couple minutes here just to talk a little bit about some of the next steps related to the strategic planning process. Obviously, getting these strategies was a really big kind of key element of this process to get to you all. And ultimately, moving forward, the work really continues to define the targets related to those different progress indicators and incorporate all of this information into our budgeting and decision-making processes. So the fiscal year 2022 budget will really be the first opportunity for us to really operationalize the strategic plan and see it in action. So going through that process will be really important, and using this as a lens for that budget and future decision-making opportunities as well. So those are two really critical next steps. And then obviously, as we get into this further, providing reports on the progress, continuing the dialogue and discussion about the strategic plan will also be ongoing and continue in the future as we work on actually implementing this plan. So there are a few kind of key policy questions that we wanted to ask you all to really jumpstart the conversation and discussion here tonight. First is whether or not these strategies seem to take us where we want to go. It's really important that we collectively feel really comfortable with those strategies. So we want to have some conversation and discussion about that. The other thing that's really important to note is that our alignment to this will mean that we're focusing exclusively on this work in the future and moving forward. So understanding that our alignment to the strategic plan will really heavily influence what we are doing. Is there anything significant that you all see as missing in the plan? And are there any additions, deletions, or modification to any of these strategies or measures that you all see as appropriate as we move forward? So those are really the key policy questions we hope to hear from you all on here this evening. With that, I would be happy to answer any questions. That really concludes our presentation, and I really look forward to the discussion from you all on this plan.
Thank you, Danielle. Questions for Danielle?
Mayor, I did notice, and I'm certain she's going to explain this clearly. I have a suspicion why, but under citywide, there's nothing under fiscal stewardship. I think I understand why, but could you maybe make that clear to everyone?
Yeah, sure. Danielle Bushcutter, Budget and Strategic Initiatives Administrator. There are a couple. I think under environmental sustainability as well, there are no citywide measures. And that's really because when we were going through those progress indicators, all of the indicators that we had fit really well under one of those outcome areas. So we didn't have any of those overarching performance indicators related to those two commitment areas.
So I had a question. I have a question about the strategic plan. And is it my understanding that what we have been working on for the past, I don't know, a couple of year on this plan, that this plan is actually being used to form our budget this year? Is that correct, Craig?
Yes, that's correct. This will be the first one where we really will start to really engage that alignment that is so necessary and is what we've been working towards.
Good.
Now, to say that, it's a warning that this is a very big ship to turn, and we will be working on alignment continuously, and also expecting that we will evolve the plan as the community continues to move. But this is a new tool that we're working with, and so I think what you'll see Thursday in the proposed budget should start to really show the organization and alignment around these things, but we're also continuing to do a lot of the things that were traditionally done in our budget that are still well aligned, but not as intentional and not as obviously put forward that way.
Okay, thank you. How about with our CIP? Does our CIP, the work that was done, and we've seen that document for a few weeks now, does the CIP align with this plan?
Same answer. It will. And again, this is it's a 5-year plan that's already been put in place. We don't want to make big changes in where that is, but that alignment is part of our scoring matrix, and we probably will fine-tune that scoring matrix to be even more in alignment with the strategic plan. So those should absolutely be working in tandem and very complementarily.
Thank you. Thank you.
Other questions before we open it to public comment? Seeing none, we'd open this to public comment. If any member of the public would like to speak on this item, and please raise your hand, and you can come forward.
Hi. My name's Phil Engelhardt. Quick question. Where are the opportunities for public input on this alignment strategic plan versus CIP? Public as in beyond elected officials, public as in the public, nameless, faceless public. That's really my question.
Okay.
And how might I get that question addressed and answered?
Okay, we'll go through public comment. We'll talk about it. Thank you. And seeing no other member of the public present, if any member on Zoom would like to make a comment, please raise your hand using the raise your hand function, or turn your camera on and let Sherry know, and she'll call upon you.
There's no public comment on this item, Mayor.
Thank you, Sherry. Bring it back to the commission. And I don't know if Danielle or Craig want to address. I know we talked a little bit about the what we've done in the past to get to this point, but as we go to the next steps and into the budget, how will the public be involved?
Yeah, it's a great question. Thank you. I appreciate that. First of all, I do want to review, we kind of glossed over it this time, and I know it's been 18 months, is actually more than that, pre-pandemic, that we conducted just a ton of public engagement through that process, and we did benefit from 3,000 plus contacts with community members, and really spent an intentional time listening. The listening process was key to building what you're seeing here, which will drive what we're trying to program, and it will continue to. But it's important, again, as I mentioned, that the feedback loop is active and is regular. So one of the things that's built into our framework is a commitment to community engagement, which is listen, share, and engage with our community to drive action and build trust in city government. So that is something that that's an accountability measure that we built into this, so that the way we conduct our business is going to always have that element in it. So that's at these city meetings, that's in budget meetings, and that's outside of those when we're engaging with the community on key decision processes, so that we can really listen and reflect back the community's expectations of the work that we're doing, and we can make adjustments along the way. So that's just a way of doing business that we've committed ourselves to. And we're actually putting in process resources within the upcoming budget to try and do that in a better way. We've already begun that, but to try and start behaving differently as deep listeners, and that we will reflect back the community's expectations. That's going to take longer sometimes, but we believe that it'll be better, and that's the commitment this framework, as adopted, makes. In addition, as more than just a legal requirement, every budget process builds in a lot of public engagement. And we will kick it off formally with Thursday, when I release my recommended budget to the City Commission. That was already actually initiated with a check-in meeting that we had in May, which we did receive some public comments on, but we will continue to have those processes, and we will have formal public hearings, which is a part of the legal requirement, but also something that we just believe in here, and we've built a couple extra steps in to make sure that we've listened and can reflect those. We want to do more than just what's in these rooms. This is an important part of the process, but listening in a complex organization and a budget where citizens need to be able to access it and be able to engage, other than just being an expert. I mean, we have some amazing people that work in this organization and have spent thousands and thousands of hours debating and discussing what boiled down to 100 or 130 strategies. So behind every one of these was a lot of work from a very talented and dedicated staff, and that expertise should be reflected here. But it's also started with the citizens and the community. It absolutely includes the elected leadership here, and it'll always include a process and many processes to engage the public. So hopefully that'll be very noticeable as we move forward in this year and in the following years.
Thank you for that. Other comments? Well, I'm very impressed with the work of the strategies. I mean, obviously, we've been talking about the progress indicators before, and certainly appreciated getting into those. And now to see the next step, which is strategy, again, some of these are broad, but they're important. And I think as people look at these, I mean, they make some strong commitments, to what we're hoping to do, and I look forward to a budget that helps work on these. But again, when we look at these policy questions of pulling these up, do these strategies take us where we want to go? I mean, as I read through these strategies and those indicators, I mean, if we can accomplish those, I think that's exactly what the point of the strategic plan is. I'm very excited, and I want to thank staff, Craig, Danielle, and I know lots and lots of people who put a lot of effort into these, to know that they're appreciated. And I do think, as a guiding principles, I think they really do push us in the right direction. So as I look at these three questions, and I'll open it up to the rest of the commissioners here in a second, I mean, do these strategies seem to take us where we want to go? Certainly I do think they do, and I appreciate the work. And, obviously part of the budget, the fun part of the budget is going to be those that implement these, and the unfun part of the budget will be things we might pull out of the budget to make it balance. And, I guess maybe we'll hear from the public probably if there's something they think we're not funding anymore, not doing anymore, that's not aligned in this plan, and we'll have the right to the time to hear about that. So, but as I read it now, I certainly don't think there's anything significant missing as I see it now. But again, we'll see how that plays out. So I'm very excited about where we're going and appreciate the work.
Yeah, Mayor, I would say, in looking at these and looking at the questions that are kind of posed to us, we as the commission really created an outline that reflected our community's desires and certainly our desires as elected officials by our community to take us where we want to go. So we created that outline and really have handed that to staff because we trust them to do this work. And barring glaring omissions, part of what is so exciting about this is to see where this process takes us and letting it play out so that we can inevitably continue to improve that as we continue to improve our ability to create a strategic plan. So this is an opportunity for us to kind of hold this question for our future selves and future strategic plans to see if we create those executive limitations for our staff to engage effectively. So I think there are two levels to it, and I think that right now, as far as like additions, deletions, modifications, does it take us where we want to go? Well, we're on the road. We'll see when we get there where we're headed.
So we started this iteration of our strategic plan in 2017. I believe Commissioner Nanda might remember that because that's when she first came on the commission, and she was very excited and looking forward to this process of us redoing our strategic plan. So unfortunately, it has taken us 4 years, but there's been a couple of bumps in there, not necessarily bumps, but just changes. One, we got a new city manager, which was a really positive point in this process, and then COVID hit, and that really slowed things down. So we are here, and I'm really glad that we've gotten to this point. You know, when we're asking the question, do these strategies take us to where we want to go? You know, my hope is, based on what I've seen, it has a great chance of doing that, but it's going to be up to every single one of us to make sure this happens. We're going to have to keep asking this question every time we make a decision on spending money, on making changes in our organizations, and how we are committed to our community. And so this is a question we have to constantly answer, and we have to constantly ask the community, is this getting us where you want to go? And so I'm looking forward to it. I think we've got the framework for doing that, and I think it's going to be a great path to follow over the next 5 years.
I guess, you know, we did the 2017 plan that Commissioner Larson was talking about, and this, frankly, is head and shoulders above that. I mean, this is a lot of work. You know, we had to start someplace, and that's what we did in 2017. And I'm very pleased with the work that's gone into this. I do think that we're going to find out whether this takes us where we want to go. At this point, I think it does. But, you know, it's this continual hearing and amending. But, you know, I really appreciate this work. I really do.
Yeah, I think we've all been very excited about seeing this before us. Another thing I think that's really important is that we'll still have flexibility, if nothing else, through public comment and public engagement. So I don't want the public to feel that something that falls through the cracks won't be found and adjustments won't be made. I'm sure we can imagine a couple, just off the top of our head, things that might fall through, and asking ourselves, how are we gonna address that? This gives us plenty of latitude to do that. I appreciate Commissioner Larson saying this. This holds our feet to the fire. This gives us accountability, not just for whatever political whims we might be held under, but this is the thing that we show the community that we're dedicated to, and they can always show us, hey, are you dedicated to strong and welcoming neighborhoods with this item? Are you dedicated to efficient and effective processes with this project? And we need that. So that's really what I love and appreciate about this. And it's very important also that this did come through community engagement. a considerable amount of it, the kind that we are all really proud of here in Lawrence, is the kind of comments, public comment, and participation that we expect from our citizens. So that's certainly what I'm most proud of.
And I've said this before, but kind of summarizing a couple of these points, when I think about strategic plans, I sometimes think about, nice little plans that you put on the wall and people look at occasionally. But I've been involved in organizations and certainly seen strategic plans that really fundamentally change how an organization operates. And, I see this as, with Craig's support, direction, to Craig, through Craig to our employees to say this is how we want to operate. And I think it, I think as Jennifer said, we support our staff to do this. And that's Craig all the way down to the person on the street who's doing their job every day, all our employees. And so I also appreciate how this, gives direction not only to the big level and to the public, but also I think it's really, empowering to staff, or at least I hope they find it that way, to, be able to make progress. And, certainly some of these strategies, both the citywide and others, I hope helps give direction, and I look forward to, where this takes us in the future. So I really appreciate the work of Craig and Danielle and all the staff up and down the organization, and I'm very excited about this. Although, again, this is another receive. We don't even have to take another vote. I don't think they trusted us with votes tonight, that we might mess it up. So we just get receive. Other comments? I don't want to cut us off here. This is really a big moment, and we've had a couple of those as we've gone through the first iteration, through the indicators, now the strategies. These are all exciting times, and certainly when we see the budget, that'll be another exciting time to move this forward. But.
Mayor, I'm curious, for the city manager, was there anything here this evening you thought we may say or change that would have affected what we're all waiting for with bated breath next week? Do you have everything you need?
This week.
This week, sorry.
Well, I really appreciate that question. I think there aren't any wrong answers still right at this stage, and the budget programming, for all the work that we've done on the strategic plan, operationalizing with the budget is really challenging. And I think you'll get a sense of that as we go through the detail of what we've tried to put together and outline some of the things that try to reflect the prioritization we sensed here. And then, we're just going to have to do the work to make it right, and make it as good as it can be this year, and then we'll look towards next year and the year after and really get these things solidified. And I think, I say create the flywheel. So there isn't anything in particular tonight that you would have said to really throw us off, because I know fundamentally how deeply you believe in what you've constructed here to these foundational points. I don't think we were that far off. But as we get into it, there will be pieces that we've struggled with when we're trying to, put the budget together. We're like, well, not sure I saw that. That's a really important thing that we do, but I'm not sure we saw how that's reflected in our scorecard conditions. So I think as we work with this tool together, we'll all experience some of that, and we'll just need to be ready to, pivot and make some adjustments as we go along and use that tool.
Thank you for that. Okay, seeing nothing on that, we'll move to commission items.
I have one thing I want to bring up. And a couple weeks ago, I think it was 1 or 2 weeks ago, the county commission took up the fire and med agreement. They had a discussion on that, and they actually eventually approved it. I just want to say thank you to our county commissioners, as well as Sarah Polinsky, for all the work that they put into it, as well as our staff. This was the first agreement we've reworked since we've decided to essentially go through our entire list of agreements and renegotiate them and making sure they're all up to date. But this fire and med one was a big one. was a long-standing agreement, I believe, from 1986 or 96. I can't remember which year, which decade it was. But there were significant changes made, and just the level of collaboration that it took was just significant. And one of the themes I heard when I was listening to the county commission meeting was the idea that the collaboration and how important it was, but also how difficult it was. But I think it's a great first step in what the county and us can do together, how we can partner together and make things happen for our community. And so I really appreciate their work on it, our work on it, and the fact that we have gotten a great new start into working with our county. Thank you very much.
I'd like to echo that and express my gratitude to the County Commission for the action that they took. I believe it was Commissioner Kelly who said that this is huge progress. I completely agree with Commissioner Kelly.
I have one item. I wanted to check in with Brandon. We had mentioned a few weeks ago some items that would come back to us more quickly regarding the Citygate report, and I wanted to see if there were any thoughts on when the commission could expect that back.
Hi, this is Brandon McGuire, Assistant City Manager. Thanks for the question, Commissioner Ananda. I think we're optimistic we can have a report back to you on those items, along with what we plan on presenting on August 3rd. I think it is the first meeting in August, which is our response for implementation planning for the police study. And so we're hopeful to have both of those items back to the commission on that meeting to work through both of those.
Okay, thank you.
I had one item. We got a request from Live Well and the work group on tobacco-free and vaping. I think they had hoped maybe the legislature would do something on that, but without that, they'd like to bring forward some suggestions on tobacco 21 and vaping in our community, and I'd like to see that, at least, hear what they're proposing at some point in a future agenda. I know we have a bunch of budgets and stuff coming up, so I think we want to do it after that, but I'd be interested at least, if others all, in hearing what they have to propose and considering that,
I'm interested in hearing it.
Yeah, thanks for bringing it up, Mayor, because I know they've talked to me about it past, and I think this would be a good time to add that to our future agenda items. So I'm very interested in learning more about it.
And I'm flexible on when we do that. I know we have a few big things coming.
I heard past budget.
Craig heard past budget for good reason.
But September, we should be in good shape to do that. We'll schedule it.
Okay. Thank you. Other commission items?
I did just want to maybe follow up on the item Citizen Flowers brought up, which may or may not be involved with what you've just discussed with Brandon. Commissioner Ananda, I just want to make sure someone does a follow-up on that. If there's some inconsistency in the way that we've directed one of our boards, I just want to follow up on that, make sure that we're clear on what happened.
Is that something that Brian could include in that?
We just add it to his list.
Yeah, actually, by next meeting, you would have seen us scheduling agenda items for the decriminalization conversation. I think that was, are we talking about the same thing? These are a list of some of the ordinances that we could. Staff has been working on that and actually has presented me with a few suggestions that we're going to put forward. Now, that may need some committee work or assignment work that we can do, but that will be scheduled for I think, sometime in the next couple of meetings. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Thank you.
Any other commission items? Seeing none, City Manager's report.
Thank you, Mayor. Well, first I want to recognize all the work that went into preparing for this meeting. Porter and his team, the people that are here working at Kurt, Sherry, everybody, Shelby Patch, our risk manager, who has had just a monstrous year and a half, everybody that went into trying to get this back and that has kept us going through this pandemic. And now many of us are live and we're welcoming the digital and the hybrid, and I feel like with a couple of hitches, we've done a good job. So I just want to thank them, recognize all the hard work that went on in that. We'll make adjustments and get even better next time. The two items I'd like to highlight on the city manager's report on there. First, the utility assistance program. I know what an important priority this has been to the city commission, and we're really excited to have it put in place. Catholic Charities is our group by contract that will be administering this program, and we outlined some of the criteria that they'll be using to administer these really important dollars to provide aid and assistance to community members during this time. The other item was, a very exciting triple crown, they call it, here for the Government Finance Officers Association, and we've now received all three of their major awards, with the popular annual financial report being recognized now. So those are any one of them is not something that we can take for granted, even though we've been receiving those for 29 years, 17 years, respectively, or 18 years, respectively. It is a great achievement, and it's rigorous standards that are assessed by outside eyes and national experts on how we're reporting and engaging with our community, and how we're reporting our financial conditions, which is perhaps the most important one in most people's scorebooks. So it was really important that we add our third, and the popular annual financial report recognition is something that I'm really glad that the Government Finance Officers Association added about 3 or 4 years ago. Maybe it was a little more than that, but they said, we need to have this some mechanism to report financial conditions to people that aren't accountants, and make it very consumable to the general population. And it's such a great move that they did that, and they established criteria so not just anybody can get this. And I was very excited that we did the work, and were recognized to receive that award. So now we have all three of the major awards by GFOA that we received, and took a lot of work, and I wanted to recognize that. The rest are items that, I should not gloss over the June sales tax report. Obviously, we got some really, really great news. We're not banking on it, but as a continuing trend, but it is something that we like seeing better than the other trends, and we will continue to be monitoring that closely. And the underside of that, the indicator of that is not just great news for us as an organization that provides essential services, and me going into the budget and trying to figure those things out, but it's an indicator that our businesses who've had terrible years are doing better again, and that people are out spending money and living their lives. And I think that's an also a really important thing that we don't gloss over either. With that, happy to answer any questions.
I had a question, Craig, on the qualification terms for the utility assistance. One of the requirements is a photo ID for the person listed on the bill, and that they must live in the home. I didn't know how that would impact folks for whom their rental agency or the owner of the home that they rent may have that utility in their name, but they are responsible for paying that. Would those folks then not be qualified to receive that assistance?
That is not a question I'm going to be able to do, but I bought time enough for Jeremy to pop.
And I'm sorry, I didn't give you any notice that I had that question.
We're ready for it.
Jeremy Wilmuth, Finance Director. I'm sorry, Commissioner Ananda, could you repeat yourself? It cut out just a little bit as you were discussing your question.
Absolutely. So the question that I have is that the second documentation required for the utility assistance is a photo ID for the person listed on the bill, and that they must live in the home. I know that there are situations in which renters are responsible for paying that bill, but it is under the owner's name. And I'm wondering if then they would not be eligible to receive that assistance if that's their circumstance.
Jeremy Wilmuth, Finance Director. So you're saying that there's instances where the meter is in the name of the landlord, but it's a condition of the rent?
The landlord or the owner of the property, yes.
Thank you.
I don't know how many homes have that situation or that scenario, but I know that there are some.
That's not a situation that I'm familiar with, so I'm going to have to research that, and we'll get back with you.
Okay.
The other thing I'll say is, to the extent that that is something that happens, part of the reason we engaged an outside agency that does this regularly is I'm sure that they've encountered these kinds of unforeseen things, and I would hope and expect that that their ability to, execute the intent of what we're trying to do, especially in these unusual circumstances, would be honored.
Okay,
So
thanks.
in general, as we research the detail.
Yeah, just so you know, the rental properties I have, that's the way it is. It's under my name, but the renters pay it. So it's not, I think it's somewhat common.
It was the case when I lived up on the hill in a house that was divided into apartments as well.
Yes, and to the degree that that we need to make modifications to our agreement to make that happen, and that intent, we obviously would.
Thanks.
Other questions about the city manager's report? I like all the good news, great news. Appreciate that, and certainly wanted to thank staff on the Triple Crown. That's impressive and appreciate it, so keep up the good work there. This is a public comment item, so if any member of the public would like to speak on one of those 6 items, if you're present, you can raise your hand. Seeing none, if anyone on Zoom would like to make a comment on one of those 6 items, you can raise your hand using the raise your hand feature, or let Sherry know and she'll call upon you.
Chad Osdale?
Hello, my name is Chad Osdale. I'm in MSO. I was just wanting to comment on future agenda items and ask that there be some consideration given to the essential workers that have been working throughout this whole year. And it would be nice if we got something for a merit raise this year, and that you allow us to have the 2.5% general wage adjustment that we are supposed to receive this year, and don't cut it like we had to do last year. And like I say, these are all questions I've asked before, but I was just hoping for some kind of consideration for us. Thank you very much.
Mayor, there's no other public comment on this item.
Okay, I'll thank you for the city manager's report, and we'll look at the calendar. Definitely look at the calendar. You can see that businesses are opening back up. The ribbon cutting, so we went from 0, 0, 0 to now looks like we have 9 ribbon cuttings in July. So that's exciting to see, and exciting to see businesses opening up and expanding and changing locations, all those exciting things. So I'm excited. I know we all look forward to those, and there's some great ones coming up.
I assume our August 31st meeting will be added after this meeting.
Yes, we'll get that added.
That's a good one. Any other comments on the agenda? On the calendar, excuse me? Okay. Seeing none, I would look to motion to adjourn.
Move to adjourn.
Second.
A motion by Commissioner Ananda, second by Commissioner Lawson. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Passes 5-0. Thank you all. We'll see you next week.